Okay, welcome back. Episode number 102, Mastering Modern Selling. I'm Tom Burton, and I'm here with Brandon today from Cairo, Egypt. Brandon,
Yes.
welcome.
Thank
And
you.
and Carson is, I think, doing a birthday party for his kid today, so he is not here. I hope he's having fun. But we have another great guest, Eric Watkins. Eric, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Pleasure to be on here. Cairo, Egypt. You're making me look bad in St. Louis, Missouri. But
Nah,
they're
come on.
somewhat close. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, pleasure to
And
be
I
on with
see
you guys. Thanks for having me.
Bob has joined us, which means Bob, I need to show you. Bob had sent me, I don't know if I don't want to share my screen, but I'll show it. I'll show it this way, Bob, and see if
He wants
it
to know how
comes
much it costs
through.
you to get off the camel.
Yeah, he told me last week that it's free to get on the camel, but it costs you to get off the camel. So, and Bob sent me a picture that was very, very similar to this. So I took it. Let's see, Bob, can you see that?
Yeah, there you go. That's
Oh,
good.
look at that.
Yeah. I like your finger on top of the pyramid there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And my camel was Charlie Brown, and the other option I had was Bob Marley. I should have chose Bob Marley, but he was great.
So were
That's
you
Yeah.
able to
great.
get off okay, or how much did it
I
cost you
got
to
off okay. It is interesting though because you don't realize how tall they are. So when he first started to stand up, I would, and he told me to hold on, but I immediately started falling forward and was like, whoa, whoa, I really need to hold on here. So
All
yeah,
right.
how much it costs you to get off the camel?
That's great.
All right.
So
Well,
yeah,
Eric,
let's jump into it.
yeah, Eric, you're the president of Abstrakt Marketing Group. I know you have quite a bit of history there. Tell us a little bit about Abstract and your background and kind of how you got there, and then we're going to dig in, I think, into some pretty cool topics today.
Sure. Yeah. So we're a sales development company based out of St. Louis, Missouri. We've been in business for 15 years. I started here 12 years ago when we were around $3 million and about 35 employees. Started as an unpaid intern, came here straight out of college, and have been lucky, sort of right place, right time to be along for the ride. And now we're 70 million in revenue. We have over 500 employees here, work with over 2,000 clients in all different industries across the country. And what we really focus on is making sure our partners never have to worry about where their next deal is coming from. It's the number one thing for why businesses go out of business. It's the number one thing that keeps business owners up at night. And then we solve that in a variety of different ways, but primarily through an outbound process that we've refined and perfected over the 15 years to generate new sales opportunities for our partners. So, in addition to that, web development, SEO, agency work, some cloud consulting, some recruiting. So, we've really kind of surrounded ourselves with building predictable sales pipelines for our clients and everything that comes with that. So, I started a little bit about my background. I started as an intern, started actually in operations, and really just fell in love with the game of sales and the metrics and the numbers and how the effort that you put in directly correlated to the result that you get out. And it was a game to me, and so I love that aspect of it. And as I continued into operations, I started into implementations, which is the onboarding of all of our new clients. And I was about 24 at the time, and I really love talking to the clients and learning their message and figuring out what's the best way to take this to market. How's it going to resonate with the target that you want to go after? And then I played that role, did a really good job, and then eventually our CEO at the time came to me and said, "Hey, Eric, we want you to be a partner sales manager," which was managing the accounts and then managing a team of 8 SDRs that are doing the calling and outreach on behalf of these clients. So I'd never made a cold call to this point, and I did not want to. I didn't think that this was the right fit for me. I was very operationally minded. I did marketing in school, but that was kind of my background, and it was a. I really thank our CEO for pushing me outside of my comfort zone, and I took that role, and it was as bad as I thought it was going to be. First thing I had to do was learn how to cold call. So I humbled myself in front of a team of wonderful people that let me do that, and eventually figured it out. Got really good at it. Was surrounded by really good people, and then sort of the rest is history from there. And grew that division, eventually took on operations and sales, and now president. And we're continuing to grow as an organization, and went through an acquisition 3 years ago, went through COVID. I feel like I've been through it all now, but learning every day.
It's funny. I have a lot of respect for that. I came out of school as an intern, joined a startup as employee number 4. And when we sold the company 12 years later, we had 400 people.
Oh,
And
wow.
I tell people that that was my on the ground MBA program. And I'm sure you feel the same way, right? You just never, you can't make the stuff up that happens in over that time period. So congratulations. I totally can respect, that growth, because it's definitely a roller coaster at times.
It is for sure. There's ups and there's been downs, but it's cool to see what it was like from the beginning and then be able to continue to share that vision. Cause as your company goes from 4 to 400, you start to lose a bit of that magic that you had in the beginning. And it takes people sticking around and being able to tell the story.
Yeah, no, there's a few stories for sure.
We should do an episode on that someday. I mean, my first company, I was employee number 1 with 2 partners. So I was the third person on the team. And I mean, we can go around and talk about that for a little bit. We can actually show all of our scars from those days.
Yeah.
They're probably still visible. Yeah.
No, I think anything that could have happened. Yeah. I had a full head of hair when I started there. I was like, it just gradually over the 11 years kind of disappeared.
Yeah, this headset's nice, or these headphones are covering my bald spot up, so that's nice.
I think headsets like that are what created my bald spot.
That could be
all those years.
So, Eric, before we get into a little bit of kind of how your secret sauce a little bit, and you mentioned, right, you got kind of thrown into the cold call deep end.
Yeah.
Just at a high level, what did you learn about cold calling? Like, what was it that wasn't working, and what was it that you figured out at least made it bearable? And because obviously, right, why are people hate cold calling? Because you don't want to be hung up on, yelled at, screamed at, whatever, right? Obviously, you had to have transitioned so that you maybe had a successful cold call, or maybe more than one. So what did you learn there?
So I think the first thing is I learned after I set my first appointment, which took a little, couple days. But once I set my first appointment, I realized that, wow, this is pretty powerful, right? Like, I just called somebody that wasn't expecting my call. I opened them up to have a conversation about the services our client offers. And I uncovered a problem that they have, and this could be a solution that could really help them. So like, once that clicked, it makes it a lot easier from there. But before that, I think I was building it up into something that it didn't need to be. Like, I think you can get caught up in, I have to get the appointment. And what worked for me is that I just needed to get this person to open up and have a conversation, because if I can do that, that's where I'm going to uncover something that's actually going to make sense for them. And I'm helping them at that point. And I think people get so focused on the outcome that your close rate is going to be 10 times higher when you get into a back and forth conversation with somebody rather than trying to force an appointment through.
That's good.
Brandon, what was it that remember Carl on our show? What was his suggestion about when you're talking to someone, like, think of you as your 8-year-old friend?
Yeah, we were actually just talking about that with my team here in Egypt over the last couple of days. It was, think about them as their 8-year-old self, and you're talking with them as your 8-year-old self. Just simplify it. Like, we get so worked up in our own minds. And Eric, I had my second company. I had a call center with about 100 people in it up in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And we talked about this all the time. It's like, hey, they're just other people on the other side. They have challenges in their company. You may call and get them on a bad day, and they might be rude, but it's nothing personal. You might call somebody on the right day, and that problem was just something that they've been struggling with, and they love you for it. And the one thing that I've learned from Brian Tracy that we talked about again today was, you start to learn how many calls you need to make before you get a yes. And it allows you to celebrate the no's because you change your mindset and you're one step closer to a yes, because you just got another no out of the way.
For sure. Yeah, the people that have done it for a while and that are really good are always talking about that. Yep, didn't get an appointment today, but man, I'm 10 no's closer. Like I'm probably gonna have 5 tomorrow. So I think that's a really good. It's so much easier said than done. I will let that be stated,
Absolutely.
but it is absolutely the mindset it takes. And part of me relates it to golf a little bit, or baseball, right? Where there is no such thing as perfection. Like no baseball player is going to go out and hit 1,000%. So when there's no such thing as perfection, if you get in a good way, but if you get addicted to the game, like it's everything is seen as a challenge that you can overcome and improve and get better. And if you really fall in love with that, the rejection really doesn't matter to you much anymore, because it's just, something that's in your way that you need to figure out.
Yeah, and I would say too, extending that analogy, if you don't try so hard, you actually do better.
Yeah, that's a really
You
good
know,
point. Yeah.
That's
when I
true
was
in golf,
younger,
right?
yeah, I mean, when I was younger and I tried to whack the shit out of the ball playing golf, man, I'd hook and slice all day long. And now that I've gotten older and maybe a little bit wiser, I just let the club do the swing.
Let the club do the
Let the
work.
club do the work. And yeah, and I think in the same thing, if you get into the basics and you just follow the process and do the work, it pays off.
One thing real quick, and we may be getting into something we could talk about later, but you just reminded me of one of the first things I do with everybody we hire is I walk them through what I call like the mindset pyramid. And at the foundation is our belief system. So nothing is either good or bad in the world. It's how we perceive it or believe it to be. And then our beliefs lead to our thoughts. We have 50,000 thoughts going through our head every day. And, we have a part of our brain that's selective about what to think about. Our thoughts lead to our words lead to our actions create our habits. We do so much training in sales and sales development, what I would say is above the surface, where what's the script I'm using? What are the different words I can be saying? And we don't train enough on what did I believe to be true when I started my job today? Like, did I think I was going to have a great day? Did I think I was going to be successful? Or when the phone's ringing, what are the thoughts going through my head? Right? Am I like, oh, don't pick up, or I'm like, please pick up. Like, I can't wait to talk to you. And just that mental aspect is so huge in what we do.
How hard is that, do you find, to get people through? I mean, I assume not everybody makes it, right?
Yeah, no, not everybody makes it. And I think it's, it's a little bit, I mean, this is going to be a bad analogy, and I'm not saying they're anything the same, but it's kind of like boot camp or something like that, where, if you do, you are going to be a completely different person coming out the other end, and it's going to help you in everything you do for the rest of your life. So we try to continue to talk about the long term, and then what's in front of your face doesn't seem so bad, because at the end of the day, we always say, like, we're not digging ditches here. It's not it's nothing, we're not doing manual labor. There's worse jobs for sure. And I'm a little crazy and I actually kind of like it, but you got to continue to like think about the long term. And if you do, then it can benefit you in the long run, but it's not for everybody, which is good. If it was, then we wouldn't have a business.
That's right.
Yeah.
Hey, Eric, I have a question. And Bob Britton, who's a good friend of the show and friend of ours, and he mentioned on there about caller ID as prevalent back when you started. And when I had my call center in '98, and then another one in 2002, caller ID wasn't as prevalent, and we didn't have to deal with that challenge. I think over the last probably 10 years or so, with the amount of startups, funded companies, all that has mean just a lot more people calling, and we all have caller ID and we all have voicemail now. Give us, like, obviously you have a successful SDR outsourced company. How is all of that affecting what you do and the success rate with people making those calls every day?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting topic, and I sort of relate it to email in a way of the game now has become like, yes, you have to be good on the phones, yes, you have to write good content, but just to land in the inbox or just to get people to pick up the phone is now a thing. Whereas before, you just every dial was the same. It wasn't, frankly, when we started, it really wasn't a thing. The biggest thing right now is numbers getting flagged for spam. So with Zoom Info, it's probably Zoom Info's fault. Love Zoom Info. Not, nothing against them, but because they made cell phone numbers so prevalent, it's now become a part of business in COVID and more people adopted it. So now these numbers are getting flagged by carriers. So just you call the wrong person, they didn't want your call, they don't know who it is, they mark it as spam. That number could be coming up as spam consistently. So we have a tool we use called Orem, which allows you to rotate your numbers, and it'll let you know if your number has been flagged as spam. If you call from a number that's been flagged, like you might have a 1% contact rate, and we're looking to have around 8% typically.
Wow. See, I appreciate that as technology advances to protect the recipient on the other end, the calling teams are trying to constantly be smarter, and it's just this continually evolution of tech and anti-tech, if you will, for it. And hearing that you're looking for an 8%. When I had my agency with a call center in 2002 to 2010, I think we were up over 80% answer rate.
Were you B2C or were you B2B?
We were B2B.
B2B. Wow. Yeah, no, we've never really been, we've been at around 10% since I've been involved in it, which is 12 years ago. But, we've kept pretty close to that, but yeah, that's typically what it is.
Yeah, and I would attribute a lot of that to the prevalence of caller ID and voicemail.
Sure.
Yeah, so that'll drop your numbers in a hurry.
So let's walk through that, because to me, right, I've never had a call center, Brandon, like you did. 8% or 10% seems pretty remarkable, actually, in this day and age, on to getting people to pick up. And we talk a lot. We were talking about before we went on the show, right? A lot of what we talk about on the show over the last 104 episodes or 102 episodes or whatever is to respect the buyer, right? Respect the buyer journey. Don't try and be cheesy and spam and, basically be a jerk, right? And when we all get a lot of that over the course of the day. So if you're getting those results, and then obviously those are converting into appointments, there's got to be something that you're doing that is valuable, right, to the people on the other end of the phone. Take us through a little bit, if you don't mind, Eric, what it is that you're doing that makes what you're doing hopefully not spammy and cheesy, right, and disrespectful to the buyer journey, but at the same time valuable in a way that they're willing to have those conversations and turn into things.
Sure. Yeah, one overarching thing is that if you look at all of our appointments that we set, 46% of them come from somebody who's told us no before. So we're really not concerned with that first yes, which I think makes us a little different, as people may take
stop right there. Hold it. Stop.
Yeah.
So when you say no, meaning you get them on the phone and they just say we're not interested, or what is the definition of no?
Yeah, so could be as hard as never call me again. Like we would just actually never call that person again. But could be nope, not interested, or it could be, this is something I should probably look at. I just don't have any time to do this right now. So no, or not right now. And so we call those every 90 days, and that's where 46% of our appointments come from. So for us, it's more about the journey of that company, because we know the people within that company are going to frequently change. Like what I really want to know is I want to know the data intelligence about that company. So we'll have our initial call, and I'll say something to the effect of, hi, Tom, this is Eric with ABC Company. We're based out of St. Louis, IT service provider that's, I'm calling you specifically because of X, Y, and Z. And I was curious, I'm sure you have something in place, but I was curious how you're handling your IT right now. So we don't do the, hey, can you give me 10 seconds to give you my pitch? Or it's just, how are you currently managing your IT? And majority of people just tell you. They say, I have a current provider that I'm working with. So then I'll say something to the effect of, that's great. I imagined you did. If you didn't have someone that took care of your IT, that's pretty important to a business. So how's that relationship going, would you say, on a scale of 1 to 10? 10. I'm absolutely happy. Great. Just so we can improve our service, what would you say is makes them so good so we can evaluate our company? And they'll give me something. Or, yeah, they're an 8. Okay, well, 8's pretty good. What are they doing that you really like? What are they doing that you could improve? Okay, I know you're happy right now. When do you typically evaluate your contract? So I'm just having these low pressure conversations over and over and over. And then over time, I have this list of, I know the company, I know if they're the right fit, I know who makes the decisions, I know when they reevaluate their contract, and I know what they care about most. So then my next call is my best call. So every next call I'm making, now I'm calling and I'm following up and I'm saying, "Hey, Tom, this is Eric with ABC IT Company. We had talked 3 months ago. You shared with me you were working with so and so. You're about an 8 out of 10 on out of satisfaction, and what you cared most about was response time. And the reason why I'm calling you is because this, like, insert what makes me different about." And now I'm just way different than any other call that they're going to receive.
So what I'm hearing you say is that first conversation, right? You're trying to get to know a little bit about their current situation, whatever it may be. And
Correct.
Brandon, we were talking before you got on, Brandon, they're representing other companies, right? So they're calling on the behalf of
Mhm.
some other company that's there. So you obviously need to know what that company does and so forth, but then you're trying to get to know that company and where they may or may not be in that buyer journey.
Yeah, and, not as much even about buy like, I wouldn't even wanna use the words buying in my first call. Like, it's just, I am a company in the market. I do these services. You looked like a company that made sense for us to target based on this. Most companies we're talking to are experiencing this. What's your current situation like? And then I'm just gathering information, and then we set appointments with people that we've talked to 12 times over 3 years. And they're like, "Honestly, you communicate with us more than our current provider." Like, just us prospecting. And that's where I feel like people miss the boat. They get really caught up on number of leads, they get really caught up on cost per appointment, and they, go either as the provider or as the customer, they go for a short-term approach of, how do I send your message out to as many people as possible right out of the gate, versus our call process. We only launch 100 to 150 companies into the process monthly and make about 5 to 8 calls to each of those companies, and then depending on where we nurture, they work their way back into our process.
Yeah, so you're really doing an account-based approach, right? You're doing named accounts. You're not just smiling and dialing with a dialer or something like that. So you know a bit about those accounts before you pick up the phone as well.
Correct. Yeah. And so the benefit of us primarily working with small to medium sized businesses across all different industries is we have a universal database on the back end. So we make probably 8 million calls a year and send 80 million emails across all of our partners. And so all of that data is getting logged, and we know information about these companies. So we can usually start in a pretty good place for our partners from the jump. But no list, it doesn't matter how good your database is, no list is perfect. The minute you upload it, the minute it starts becoming out of date. So in a lot of these things, you need to find out through conversation.
Interesting. So I know you also use LinkedIn and social and things like that with your customers. Kind of an omni, I guess, a little bit more of an omni-channel approach, right? You're not just making cold calls or sending emails. How does all that work, and how do you see there's a 1 + 1 + 1 equals 5, or how do you see that kind of building on each other?
Yeah, so it's actually starting to become really hard to figure out where we got the lead from. Like when you have different groups. So we don't have an SDR that is responsible for sending the email and making the calls and doing the LinkedIn. We specialize that. So we have a LinkedIn team, we have an email team, and we have a calling team. And then, when people start arguing over credit for leads, that's when the omni channel's working, because it gets a little tricky to figure out where it came from. Because our first touch may have been on LinkedIn, and then, but they also happened to get this email, but then they called them and they said they didn't see the email, but so that is kind of like how we evaluate that it's working. And then our approach, very simply, is we try to go, because we use an account based approach with our calling, we try to focus on one contact per company. So we're just trying to trying to, there's multiple people involved in the decision, but we're just trying to target one person, whoever we feel like would be that best candidate. So we really use these other channels to go deeper within companies. So we'll go after multiple decision makers who may have a say or be a part of that process. And that's kind of how we use that alongside of our calling process.
So Eric, is that what you do for your company's lead generation, or you do that for your customers as well?
Both. So we actually do
Okay.
it so we pretty much do our exact same process. The only difference is with our product, it's exclusivity. So we don't get
Yeah.
to do it for the long haul forever.
So you drink your own champagne is what you're saying.
Drink your own champagne, eat our own dog food. I've heard like a million our sales guys
Yeah,
always have a new version of it. Yeah.
Nobody wants to eat dog food. I've
No,
never understood that expression.
I
We
don't get
drink
it
our own
either.
dog food,
Yeah.
or the other one I don't understand is drinking Kool-Aid. Like everybody that drank the Kool-Aid died. Like
I
I don't
know.
that analogy just doesn't work for me.
Not a good one and probably not appropriate,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I love moving this in. Now we're getting into the omnipresence, and we've got the calling capabilities. What are you doing specifically in LinkedIn? And I know Tom and I are really curious too about how you use your show as part of your brand building, your personal branding, and your lead generation.
Yeah, so for our company, for LinkedIn, we actually do we offer this as an incentive to employees. So a way for them to make a little bit more money. So we have like 100 employees here currently that allow us to use their LinkedIn profiles to do outreach on behalf of them. And then they can pop into the inbox and respond. And then they get paid for us to be able to use their profile. Then they also get paid per deal that closes. And that's really important because with LinkedIn, authentication is becoming an even bigger thing. I don't know if you guys have had to
Mm-hmm.
do it yet, but you got to send in your driver's license and have a real account, which I can't wait for. So all the fake accounts go away.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's how we run our process, and then we segment our list we work in a lot of different industries, so we have a specific message that will go to this industry, and we'll use this profile. So that
So let me make sure I understand. So you're using employees' LinkedIn profiles, and you're using like LinkedIn automation. You're sending cold connection requests and sending messages out through their profile.
correct. And then as soon as we get I would give it a little more credit than cold. It is cold. We've never spoken with them before, but it is more specific based on the industry that they're in. So it's something more
Okay.
relevant. But as soon as they respond, it goes to a team that manages that inbox. So they'll manage all those responses, and it's a human responding from that point forward. And
But
a lot of times we'll call them.
it may not necessarily be the human whose account is being used.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So the employees are basically providing the surrogate accounts that you're using to reach out. And I assume some employees may have more industry specific people that you're reaching out to based on their background or their area of expertise or
Yeah, it's not really as much based on the employees, but it's just more, we want to, based on our target market and how many companies we can go after, we'll segment those based on the industries. And then, they'll pop in there too. And I had somebody the other day was like, "Hey, I got this hot lead in my LinkedIn and he wanted to give it to me." I'm like, just give it to the sales team, but it was cool to see.
and I heard you mention that you are compensating the employees or even getting them a commission. Are they just in a commission pool based on what close, or is there something that's directly attributable to their LinkedIn profile that they would get?
Yeah, so if we know what profile it came from. So if it came from their profile, they will get the commission on that deal. Yeah. And
Wow.
it's just a interesting way to get people involved in it, and it makes sense financially for us. We pay a lot of money to drive leads for our business, and they're doing us a favor allowing us to do it, and they can win on the other side of it.
I'm curious about your LinkedIn activities, Eric, as a president of the company. What do you do around LinkedIn, and how important is that to not just you but the overall company?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say this is definitely an area for growth from me.
Okay.
We record a podcast every Friday called The Grow Show. See the sign behind me, with my CEO and our CRO. And I try to post content relevant to that weekly. But I could do more. And I'm probably not as engaged as I should be. So I just
Yeah.
have the automated messages going from my campaign to typically like more enterprise targets, is what they use mine for. But no,
Yeah.
definitely something I nothing to brag about from what we're doing from that standpoint.
Yeah.
We could definitely be
So it
doing better.
sounds like your team uses your LinkedIn account for automation and messaging on your behalf.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I mean, it depends on different targets. I'll use it as well. So, if I'm getting pulled into or involved in a sales process, I'll use it in that way as well.
I'd love to hear about your show too. How do you use the show, and then how do you use that content, and how much? I mean, I understand your primary motion is going to be calling. That's your company. That's
Correct.
probably going to be the way that you grow. Like our service that we offer is CEO LinkedIn personal brand building to grow their brand. Therefore, we focus a lot on that. Yours is
Yeah.
on the call side. But I am curious about your show. Why, if you're so focused on the cold calling, why a show, and how do you use it?
Yeah, great question. So, we started this, let's say it was a little after COVID, maybe late 2020, early 2021. And the reason we did this is because we felt like we had all these stories and value we could add that we just haven't put down or taken the time to put together. So we really put this together for two groups of people. It was for our current clients, because a lot of them are running businesses, and the whole point of the Grow Show is how to scale your business from 0 to 50 million. So kind of giving the lay of the land of here's the mistakes we made, and here's some things to think about as you're doing that. And then we also did it for our internal employees. And that was sort of a little bit of a hidden benefit, but we talk about things that we do here, and then we can use that for trainings. Like we talk about MAPS a lot, which is our one-on-one meetings, is what we call them. And we have an episode where we're talking for 45 minutes about the importance of them. And, somebody the other day was like, hey, what was the link to that podcast where you talked about this? And then I'm able to just give them that, and they can listen to it, and then they can share it with somebody else. And then, I think it's for prospective clients, we originally, when you do this, you're like, okay, we're going to get a ton of deals from this. And I think it's more of a certain people, we'll get a few deals every month. Um, but I think it's more of a credibility thing, just to be out there consistently putting out content, and more of a in the process. But really trying to help our clients and our people, I would say.
Do you feel like you're getting prospects or people that for your services, right? People that are coming in and asking about your services because they've heard you through the show. Do you think that's a form of attribution that you're seeing?
Yeah, I don't know if they're finding out before or after we've reached them. That's a little tough to tell, but I do know that our close rate in Gong is like 45% higher if the Grow Show is mentioned by the prospect. So I think it's more of okay, these guys are real. I've listened to a couple episodes. I like what they're saying. I'm aligned with what they're doing versus a magnet to attract people.
I mean, Brandon, wouldn't that basically be the whole premise of, hey, I already know you and I see you
Yeah,
everywhere, right?
yeah,
Right. I
yeah,
already know.
yeah.
I
It
mean, I'll
totally
just even
fits
take
right
the
there.
already I know you part, right?
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's a good number. Like I know Joe Hill was listening. I don't know if he's still on here, and we've been talking about him launching a show for his higher performance group, and he works with higher education organizations. But that data point, I think that speaks volumes. And what I heard you say is within Gong, so your AI tool that you use on your calls, if they mention the Grow Show, they're 45% more likely to close.
Correct.
That
Yeah,
right?
if the prospect mentions it, not us.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. That I mean, that goes, Tom, you and Kevin on your other show and on this show, we hear it as well. Like, we get the messages that say, "Hey, I've been listening to your show for the past month. Can we talk?" And that's like, had no idea who you were. You're an ideal customer. Absolutely, we're going to talk. But it's that inbound because of the show, and it helps towards those two goals that we talk about. I see you everywhere, and I feel like I already know you. Lowers a lot of those barriers to talking with people.
Yeah. Sure.
So Eric, Brandon, do you have any more questions on LinkedIn before I switch? I want to switch gears.
No, go right ahead. Go for it.
I'd love to hear more about your product after this, Brandon, because I think I could probably use some help.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
He heard about you on the show, Brandon. See, it's a much higher,
see,
much higher close rate here.
Yeah, it's not 100%, but 45%.
That's right. That's right.
45 is good. That's a great number, Eric. I mean, look, Tom, excuse me a second, because let's unpack that a little bit for people that are watching it. Is it, Eric, you were saying you've got an 8% answer rate, which is, arguably low. 8% out of 100, it's low. In our current times, it may or may not be a great number. I'm not an expert in the data. Sure. You are. And I like your other number that said, hey, you're tracking that 48% of your leads come from people who have previously said no. So we're creating this pattern. But when we're talking about the value of social, we're talking about the value of these digital tools that we can use. When you're saying that if a customer mentions the show, they're 45% more likely to become a client, there's tremendous value in that show. And what I would be thinking is, hey, if it's a 45% more likely to close, how else do we use the show? How do we use, like we talk about, we use shorts from the show and we target our ad campaigns in YouTube and LinkedIn in front of our ideal customers. Can we turn that 45 up to 60 by getting in front of people? Or can we start, I would be curious, your data too, is how many of your prospects mention the show? And even if it's low, it's like, oh, it's only 2% or 3%. Yeah. Can we get it to 5%?
Right.
There's
that's
all
probably the bigger lever for sure.
Yeah. And we live in this time now where we're always looking for, do we have a higher, and Carson's saying, can I do something that increases my probability for success just a little bit? Because everything is so difficult right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those are amazing numbers, Brandon, I think. And those align with what we see. We don't have Gong, or we're not doing Gong analysis. Maybe we should be. But I would say, and Eric, I have a software company that targets manufacturers and wholesale distributors. So it's a very industrial marketplace that we're dealing with. And we find that by far the quality of the conversation and the propensity for it to close or to move down the sales cycle is much larger if they've seen me on another show that I do.
Oh, yeah.
And I have a question on that market I want to talk about, but I want to hit Bob's question here first, because I think it's.
I was just messaging you that, going, we need to ask Bob's question.
Yeah, no. So, and I think it's an interesting one. He's saying, doesn't outsourcing like this cause a seller's prospecting muscles to atrophy? It creates a dependency on others to reach out to other people.
Well, if I was Eric, I would be like, I would love for my clients' outreach muscle to atrophy and rely fully on us.
Most of them don't really want their muscles. They're out fully.
Yeah. The issue is, and Bob's spot on. Like I truly believe as a seller, you should always be doing a little bit of your own prospecting. I'm assuming that's where he's going here, right? Where you just have a seller sitting there taking leads all day.
Yeah.
But I will say, I would love for our sales team to self-source 50% of the day, but it's just not happening. Like at the end of the day, we've created a seller's environment where they can make a lot of money being really good. They're not taking anything away from them without putting in the same amount of effort that maybe they had to in the past. And I just think you can do that, but you're not going to get the top salespeople unless you feed their pipelines with leads. And so I've always thought about my business this way of, I want to figure out my lead flow first and foremost, and then I will figure out who those leads go to. And because I think a lot of people make mistakes when they're trying to scale their business, and we've done this, is they just go hire a bunch of sales reps. Oh, I need to sell $100,000 more. I'll just go hire 5 sales reps and give them a $20,000 quota, which is great, but it's so much less predictable than I know my close rate is 15%. So for every 7 leads, I'm going to close 1 deal. So I need to go generate, 700 more conversations to hit my goal. I would always rather solve for that problem that's further up the funnel and more in my control. And if you do it right, is cheaper than the other way to do it. So yes, Bob is right. Long-winded answer. Yes, Bob, you are right. We still have our best sales reps self-sourcing at least 10% of their time. They should never give it up. But yeah, the other 90%, we keep them fat and happy.
And part 2 of Bob's question here, how concerned are you about AI automation? You hear a lot about, AI is going to, take over the BDR, SDR role. It's all going to be automated. I know it's probably hard to know, but do you guys have any concerns there?
Well, yeah, I would be lying if I said I didn't. I think I always just think about myself, and maybe this isn't the best perspective to look at, but like if I'm looking at a product, I don't really there's going to come a point in time where I don't want to talk to a robot anymore. Even if they're 100% right and better than the person that I'm talking to, I want a little human interaction. And I think we're pretty far away from who knows, right? I'm not the expert here. We're pretty far away from AI being able to 100% replicate what a human could do. From everybody that talks about it, that knows it, says we will get there eventually. But I do know the one thing on the call side, I'm not as worried about it, because if all of a sudden first of all, I believe AI B2B calls are illegal currently, unsolicited B2B calls. And if they're not, they will be relatively soon after it gets expanded, because who wants their phone ringing from, part of the reason that keeps my phone rings a lot already, but part of the reason that it stays down is because the courage it takes for someone to make a cold call. There's just not that many people that are willing to do it. And if all of a sudden a computer can do it, our phones will literally be ringing off the hook, and it will eventually just kill the channel. So we'll just have to make a decision. And I think that just happens with phone. It's already starting to happen with email a little bit. LinkedIn's been really good about like fighting this. So I just, we'll have to learn and evolve over time. And AI has started to play a role in a lot of our processes, but I just don't see it fully replacing. I'm a little crazy. I could actually see it. This is a terrible take, and I'm sure everybody will disagree with me. I could actually see it replacing the selling side more than I could see it replacing the sales development side. Because the sales development side is the door opener. It's how I even have the trust to look further. Sales side, I think people are so sick of being discovered on pitches. Like I do a lot of pitches for different softwares and tools, and it's like I'm not ruling out discovery. It's huge and it's a big part of the sales process. But like, you should know enough about my company where you can fill in a lot of the blanks and not ask me 20 questions every sales call I'm on. But
yeah. Eric, I think I believe, I agree with you. I think that, and I know Bob's he's asked that same question multiple times over shows over the last probably 6 months, Bob. And I think it's a great question, but I do believe that there's something about the human spirit that's going to resist that to a point that it's not going to work. It's just like a lot of the AI driven comments in LinkedIn right now are getting ignored, because we can smell them a mile away. And we're like, I'm not going to respond to someone's comment that was done by an AI bot. I feel stupid talking to somebody's bot, so I'm just not going to do it. And I think it'll apply in the calling world as well.
Yeah. And I think service wins out over time. And I know it's not a direct correlation, but I think about like, who are the companies that are doing it the best at scale? And I always think of Chick-fil-A. I don't know if you guys have Chick-fil-A's by area, you like them, but it's like that place is an absolute machine. Like, I get my chicken sandwich on time, quick, hot, fresh, friendly service. Like, that will always be a differentiator, even if, everything is automated. Like, people will pay a little bit extra to do that. And then here's the other thing is, it's kind of like direct mail. Like, direct mail came to a point where it was so saturated, you wouldn't even want to go to your mailbox and see what's in there. And then it went away, and then it's coming back, so everybody stops making calls. And then now it's, you're the only human making the calls, and you start your call with like, "Hey, I'm a human, I promise. Like, ask me anything. I'm not one of
Yeah.
those other robots." So I think the market zigs, you zag, like there'll always be a place for the human touch.
I agree. And Eric, I love that analogy. I think that, I used to own a printing company as well as part of my agency. And I think direct mail is making a good comeback because there's not a lot of competition in the mailbox right now.
Nope.
There's just not a
Nope.
lot of competition.
Yep. We are actually just launching a product that's building that into our call process that we have, and we've already tested it, and it's dynamite.
Oh,
It's a
I'd
huge.
love to see what you have. Back in 2007, 2008, we built sequences, and we didn't call them sequences. We weren't that smart at the time, but we had a I don't even remember the word we used for it, but yeah, it was direct mail, phone call, couple, and then we started incorporating email in it, and those direct mail pieces had a huge impact on how many people would actually either return a call or answer a phone.
Yeah, and we've had that as well. Like we see a lot higher contact rates and close rates when they have that. And then the other thing, sort of a hidden benefit when you do this at the scale we do it at, is it's so much easier as a rep to make a call when you send them a
Yeah,
packet. It just takes a little bit of the pressure off as well.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
think
That's
there's going to
cool.
be a little heyday for that over the next couple of years, and then I'm sure everybody will do it, and then we'll be one of the same things. We'll have to find the next new thing.
Keep learning. Eric,
Yep.
I have a question. Tom, can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Um, I'm curious about this. About two episodes ago, on our 100th episode, we had Daniel Disney as our guest. I don't know if you know who Daniel is. He is known as the king of LinkedIn. He's been doing social selling, coaching, training, speaking since, I don't know, 2012 or something. He's been around a while. And he was saying that one of a new cold call technique or strategy right now is actually when the person answers, just to say, "Hey, this is Daniel. This is a cold call," and then saying something. Is that something you all have used, have you tested? I was when he said that, it made me really curious, and I got a cold calling expert on, so I want to take the
Yeah.
advantage of asking you about that as a tactic.
Yeah, so that I would put that under the bucket of what I would call permission-based opener, where you're just being upfront from the start and seeing if they're open to continue to talking. We have tested it and we see about the same, but what we see is the amount of people that get turned off by it is like greater than the what you get from it. And that's just been our
Yeah,
perspective. I'm not saying it doesn't work for
yeah,
different, but we're calling small to medium businesses. We're talking to, we have a lot of industrial clients. So, you know, they just want to get into the conversation and go about their day. So I don't prescribe to it. Some really smart people do, and I'm not saying they're wrong, but I'm always uh in favor of like, don't waste my time. Just tell me why you're calling, and then let's get on with it. Versus like
cool.
hey, give me 27 seconds to talk about. Um, but I don't know that I'm not. I'll give that with caveat. I don't know if I'm right on that. I'm sure
Mhm.
people have data that could prove me wrong. But we've seen a lot
Yeah,
of
but
success with it.
there
Yeah.
you probably have data that could prove you right too. So
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is I like ending with the open-ended question about their situation, because even when they reject me, I figure out their situation. So even when they say, "Nope, I already have somebody I'm working with." Okay. Now I have that as a data point in the future, and maybe they'll let me get a couple questions deeper. So that's our philosophy on it.
yeah, that's cool.
So what I hear out of all of this is kind of the common denominator here, and I think, Eric, maybe this is probably what has caused you to rise above the noise a bit in what you're doing, is always thinking about experience, right? So even in that initial phone call, that cold call, how do I make that as positive an experience for the customer as possible, or the prospect as possible? And even the AI stuff that we were just talking about, right? If I'm just getting a bunch of AI crap, that's not a great experience. Or
Right.
your Chick-fil-A example was a good experience, right? That you remember.
Yeah.
I think that is, no matter what we do, however we change the channels, the motions, all of that, if we kind of keep that experience in mind, which is the backbone of what we try and talk about here on Mastering Modern Selling, seems to be the common denominator yet once again.
Yeah, I think you're really hitting on that. And honestly, I don't think about it that way a lot, but you're right. Like it's, on one side of the axis, you have the customer experience, and on this side, you have the volume in which you can do it. And I think what we've seen in the market is there's now like a bar established for the minimum experience. And if you're below that, you're just not going to land at all. So you have to find ways to improve the experience. And then, volume is still a huge part of it. So you can't just sit there and research a company for 3 hours before you call them. Like there's a part of that game as well. But yeah, I think you're hitting on something important there.
Well, I think even your fast food analogy, and I've read some stuff on this, right? As fast food has gotten more expensive and so forth, people are like, hey, if I'm going to go eat or go to fast food, I'm going to go with the best experience because I'm still going to pay a fair amount of money. So why not get a better experience? Right. And
Right.
I don't know if you have In-N-Out Burger out there, but In-N-Out Burger, Chick-fil-A, all of those are sort of recognized as providing a superior experience than a Burger King or a Wendy's or something like that along the way. And they're getting a lot of that McDonald's traffic is moving in those directions because of experience. So,
yeah,
all
you
right,
can see
Brandon.
it. I mean, that line is around the corner every time I pass Chick-fil-A.
I know. I'm in Cairo today, but I live in Atlanta, and so we
You're
get a
in
lot
the
of
Mecca.
the things they test too. I just read too, Chick-fil-A is coming out with a new concept location where basically everything is up like one story high, and you place your order, and then it like comes down into some sort almost like a bank teller. And you
That's
just grab your
crazy.
bag and go. So that'll be an interesting concept. And I'm assuming there'll be some sort of person there saying my pleasure, but we'll see how it
Yeah.
goes.
Yeah.
You know that Chick-fil-A came about because they were selling the chicken sandwiches in Waffle House, and Waffle House basically kicked them out because they were selling too many chicken sandwiches, and so they
I
started
never knew
Chick-fil-A.
that.
Yeah,
I
Waffle House
never
Yeah.
knew
was
that.
the
And
genesis.
That
their
was a mistake.
Yeah,
their first location was right across the street from a GM plant. And
at
that
a
was
shopping
really
mall, right? It
everybody
was in a shopping mall or something. Yeah.
I think their second one was a shopping mall, but
Okay.
their first one was more like a diner, and it was across the street from a
Okay.
GM plant. Yeah.
Well, as we wrap up here, fast food facts and our show
Yeah.
on fast
That's
food.
right. I was just told there's a Chick-fil-A in Cairo also. I haven't
All right.
been there yet, but there is
There
one
you
here.
go. I'm not surprised.
So, Eric, great insights. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
think this has
Yeah.
brought some real food for thought, right? And we
No
talk
pun
about
intended.
with Carson all the time about is Brandon needs to, yeah. See, it's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I like it. I like Eric. We need to have him
Yeah.
back. That was
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Bring me back. This has been a blast.
Brandon, any final thoughts, questions here before we wrap up?
I think for everybody listening, we talk so much on the show about modern, and we talk about modern prospecting, and it's not that we ever put down cold calling, Eric. We don't ever put it down. I mean, I mean, my first three companies I built by cold calling, but I think that being able to talk about what are the strategies that are working, and Courtney, I love that you brought up adding direct mail into the mix, and
Mhm.
really, I think we live in a time where none of the tools are bad. We just need to start looking at the tools and how the tools support each other, how they put us in a position to create the highest opportunity for success. So I really appreciate you coming on today, Eric, and sharing with us. And I would love to have you come back again sometime.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I enjoyed it. This has been a blast. I'm learning about ourselves as well as every time we do this. So it's great.
Yeah. And my biggest takeaway, other than the experience part, is right. It's not so much the motion, Brandon, that's bad or good. It's the way, the approach that you take with that motion.
Yeah.
Right. And,
Yeah.
there's a lot of bad ways to use LinkedIn, and then there's good ways to use LinkedIn. There's
Yeah.
bad ways to use cold calling and good ways to use cold calling. So,
Yeah. Well, and it's like, Bob mentioned it, and we've talked about this a lot, that the data says at any given time, 2 to 3% of any market is currently in market. So when you're just calling, you're looking for that 2 to 3%. And it is a bit of a hunt game, and it's a numbers game and all that. But when you supplement it with other things like your LinkedIn presence, your CEO's reputation grows, you got direct mail, you have targeted ads, you're just increasing your opportunity for success, and you're not rejecting or neglecting any of the potential tools.
all right. Well, thanks again, Eric. Yeah, we'll definitely have you back. love to get more deeper insights. And I know Carson would have plenty of questions, so we'll have to get you back with when
Okay.
Carson's here.
Yeah.
Brandon,
Sounds great.
wrap us up. We don't have Carson to wrap us up, so I'm leaving it to you.
You're leaving it to me. Well, I don't want to use this thing. Hey, thank you everybody for joining us today on another episode of Mastering Modern Selling, and hopefully we'll see you on LinkedIn real soon.